Welcome back. In this video, we're going to look at making sure we can detect collisions between the player and the pickups, and also be able to differentiate between the collision with the pickups and, say, with the walls. Okay. Basically, what we want to do is when the player hits the object, the pickup object, we want to trigger a new behavior. And then we want to make sure, we want to test that the object is the correct type of object to be picked up. If there was no test, you might be picking up the wrong object. So what we're going to do is go back to the script, the player controller script, and edit that script. Before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about how we could access sort of help as well. If you look at all of these, there's these little question marks here, okay, with a little book. This also opens up the reference, okay, and the reference is specifically for the different component that's attached here. So, for example, I might want to figure out the circle collider one, so I can just click on that, and it opens up the documentation. I don't know why it's opening up in the edge, but it is. Anyways, this is the information about the component, and so it goes through each of these. What does density mean? What does material mean? And so on, that you can learn more about. Okay, but the cool little thing too is that there's a button here to let us go to the scripting reference, so we can switch to scripting and look at what we can do here. Again, there's a variety of variables. Okay, is enable true or false? Is trigger true or false? Things like that. Different types of functions. And there's also something way down here called messages. And this is actually what we're going to look at. And basically is this Ontriggerenter 2D is what we're going to do. And it will send a message. So it will sort of, almost like a little flag, okay, that's saying, hey, we've got a collision going on here. So it's sent when another object enters a trigger collider attached to this object. What this is going to allow us is sort of still detect the collision, but actually not have a physical collision occurring. You don't want to have it so that it's hits it and bounces away. Okay, basically we just want it to sort of collide with it, and then that object's going to disappear, and we're going to get the point for it. Okay, or indicate that we've got the collision. So let's click on this Ontriggerenter 2D and see what we've got here. Just like before, we've got an example. And we're going to take this here, and we won't use all of it, but we will take the script and sort of modify it. So I'm just going to copy it and then open up my mono-develop. And I'm going to make sure I put it below my update function. Well, make sure I'm in the right one first in my player controller. So below my fixed update function, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I could put it kind of anywhere in here, but I'm going to put it down here. So what I've got, I'm just going to space this out a little bit here, is perhaps something where it looks like, the character is in quicksand. So maybe that could theoretically make them die, I guess, or maybe make them slow down, or make them get stuck for a certain period of time. Okay, and so this obviously doesn't really fit with us, but we can make some modifications here. So we've got a function name here, Ontriggerenter 2D. Okay, and so what it says here is whatever we collide with, okay, the other collider 2D, we're going to give the variable name other to it. So the player has a collider, and then the thing that it's hit is called the other, and it has a collider 2D as well. Okay, so it has to be those two collider 2Ds interacting. We mentioned before it couldn't be a 2D and a 3D. Okay, but it doesn't matter if it's a circle or a box or what have you, as long as it's a collider. So we don't need most of this code here because we're not going to be in quicksand. So I'm just going to delete that. And also with this character in quicksand now, because it was a Boolean, which is, we'll talk about later, but is a true or false variable. We'll get rid of that as well. Now what we're interested in is, like I said, in these collisions here. And if we go back to our Ontriggerenter 2D, and what we're interested in, let's just go back one step here. There are a couple things. One of them is the tags. Okay, so we're interested in the tag of this object. Okay, we want to be able to differentiate between one object and the other. We're going to do that by tagging them. The other thing then is that we're going to be able to compare the tag. Okay, so there's a function here called compare tag, which allows us to look at the different tags. The other thing that we want to do is, like we did before, we turn something on and off. So we want to be able to sort of set active. And let me just find that here. Is active and enabled, I think. Just let me see, it's disappeared here. Set active. Well, there's one where we also want to be able to sort of activate it as well. And we'll come back to that in a second. All right, so now a tag, okay, is something where we can actually give it sort of a different name. And if you noticed, all those players, okay, had different names. Pickup1, sorry, all those pickups had different names. Pickup1, Pickup2, Pickup3. So getting, sort of to code it so that, oh, it could pick up, make sure it's named pickup doesn't quite work because they have a variety of names. Each separate game object has a different name. But up here, we've got something called tags, okay? And so we can actually go in and create a tag so that they all have the same tag. And that's what we're going to use here. Okay, so we'll do that and basically just deal with that. Now what we can do below, okay, is also compare that tag. And so where was that here in our functions? Compare tag, there we go. What we can do here is when we've got a Untriggerenter, okay, now we're using the 2D. This is sort of more for the 3D at the moment, but the same idea. The collider 2D is state other. If that other, okay, the thing that we collided with, and we're going to compare its tag, is set to player, sounds very much what we want here, what we're going to do is we're going to destroy that other game object. So we're going to destroy the player, basically, in this particular situation. Now, this is not exactly what we want, but something very close to it. So I'm going to actually copy this script, okay? I think I can just do with that. Control-C. And I'm going to go back to my script, and I'm going to put it in just below here, okay? Now, we'll have to make a few modifications to that, but that's a good start. Now, one of the things that it's doing is it's actually going to destroy the game object, and that's okay, perhaps. But what we'll do in this situation is just kind of turn it off. And so we're going to do that set active to false. So as I mentioned before, I couldn't quite find it in here. And it's because it's under the game object component. So I'm just going to click on that. Okay. And we just want to look at the game object. And so the game object, you can set it to, just a second here, game object, set active. Okay, so it activates or deactivates the game object. So if you click on that, you can see here that if whatever happens, you can take that game object and set active to false. So again, I'm going to grab this, try not to grab that bottom part. Just wanting to grab it anyways. Okay, there we go. Control-C. And hopefully that didn't mess up my keyboard. Okay, and then paste it in here. Okay, there we go. So what we're going to do here is, like I said, basically compare the tags. We're going to have to make a change there. And instead of destroying the object, we're going to just make it kind of disappear. Okay, it's going to be there still, just sort of hide it. Now, a little bit about the formatting here. You could do this. If there's just one line following the if statement, it will just run that one line. If there's multiple lines, you have to be careful. You have to use curly braces to make sure everything is run in those braces. I prefer to include the braces there, just in case if you wanted to add more code after the fact. So just that one line, it makes it easier. Okay, and sort of that consistency. Even if it's just one line, it would work okay, but I like to put those brackets in just so that we've got it. Make sure that if I did edit that line, it wouldn't affect us. So what we're going to do here is, this is on the player, so I don't want to compare the tag with the player. I want to compare the tag with something called pick up. And I'm going to spell it pick up with sort of one word, okay, with that capital U to differentiate, to sort of set that into two words. So that's sort of camel case there. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a collision. And so when there's a collision, we're going to run this Ontriggerenter 2D. So this function would only run when a collision occurs. What happens is whatever it hit, so that whatever the player hit, it's going to identify that as the other. Okay. Then what it's going to run is it's going to run this little thing. It's going to check if that other's tag is pickup, is this string called pickup. Then what is it going to do? Well, it's going to turn that, now we have to be careful here, that other dot game object, we're going to set active to false. So it's going to disappear. Okay. So if we set game object set active to false, that would actually delete our player or hide our player. So we want to make sure that it's deleting or hiding the pickup. So that should work. Again, you might want to just check for any red marks. Okay, it looks like my code is okay. I'm going to save this. Then I'm going to go back into Unity. Okay, always just sort of come down, make sure there's no errors there. Now, when I do this, it still doesn't seem like I've made much of a difference here. Okay, it's still bouncing off. Okay, there's two things that we need to do here. The first one is we need to go into the prefabs. Okay, so my prefabs, my pickup, and this will actually change all of them. I have to set the circle collider no longer from just a regular collider into an is trigger, because we're using that Ontriggerenter. The other thing I have to do is, because we wanted to have it as a pickup one, I have to create a tag. Okay, so I'm going to add a tag. There's a bunch that were already there. Okay, it's going to create a new tag, and I have to make sure it's spelled exactly the same way. Okay, so make sure that it's spelled exactly how it was in the script. And you might even want to go back just to prevent sort of from errors happening. Okay, just go back. For some reason it's not letting me go back. Pick up with a capital U. There we go. Okay, so it looks okay. Oops, now I'm opening another version of Unity. Just a second here. There we go. Okay, so we do definitely have the pickups there. Okay, and so let's just make sure that this is sort of working. Should work now. Okay, now I'm not getting it to disappear yet, but it's definitely passing through, which is a good sign. Okay, let's see, we got a little bit of time here to remaining. Oh, and you know what I did? This is a very common thing. I always hate the way it does this. So I'm going to go back to my prefab again. Okay, my keyboard's acting up again. Okay, so I'm just going to click on the prefab. Notice it's still untagged, and I forgot. Okay, even though I created that tag, I got to go back and select it. Okay, so now this should work. That's a very common mistake. There we go. So with just a couple lines of code, what it's doing is it's identifying which ones are the pickups, and then it's setting those ones to active. So notice they're still there in the game. What's if you click on here, you'll notice that they've disappeared. This check mark, the active box, has been removed. Okay, so that's good. We've still got a little bit more work to do here, but we've made a pretty good start. So let's end this one and then continue in the next video.